For 500 years, one little book has been seen as both a ruthless guide for rulers and, well, a dire warning for the rest of us. We're talking about Niccolo Machiavelli's The Prince, maybe the most controversial handbook on power ever written. So, what did Machiavelli actually say that still manages to shock and influence us so much today? At the very heart of his whole philosophy is this one famous, pretty brutal question. If you're a ruler, is it better to be loved or is it better to be feared? The answer he gave would, believe me, echo through centuries of politics. But here's the thing. To really get his answer, you have to understand his world first. The Prince wasn't something written in a quiet, peaceful library. Oh no, it was forged in the fire and chaos of Renaissance Italy. This wasn't some theoretical exercise for him. This was about pure survival. I want you to just imagine a world where your allies today are without a doubt your enemies tomorrow. A world where popes are leading armies, mercenaries are switching sides for a bigger paycheck, and foreign kings see your home as just another prize to be conquered. In all this chaos, Machiavelli wasn't dreaming up some perfect utopia. He was trying to engineer a practical blueprint for how to build a state, and more importantly, how to hold on to it against all odds. And look, he wasn't just some academic observer. He knew this world inside and out. For 15 years, Machiavelli was a top diplomat for the Florentine Republic. He was in the room with kings, popes, and generals. But then, the powerful Medici family came back to Florence, and his entire world just collapsed. He was fired, accused of conspiracy, thrown in prison, and brutally tortured. It was only when he was in exile, completely broke and disgraced, that he poured all of that hard-won, really painful experience into this little book. So, what was his big revolutionary idea? Well, it was simple and honestly shocking for the time. He argued that to succeed, a ruler absolutely must separate politics from traditional morality. He was just so tired of philosophers writing about these imaginary republics that never existed. He wanted to talk about the world as it is. This one idea right here is the key to everything. Machiavelli is basically saying that any ruler who tries to be good all the time in a world full of people who are not is just going to be destroyed. For him, the survival of the state is the ultimate goal, because if the state falls, there's no virtue or goodness left to protect anyway. So this presents two totally different paths for a prince. The first path is the idealist, right? The one who is always good, always compassionate, always faithful. The second path is Machiavelli's realist. This is the ruler who understands that sometimes cruelty and deception are necessary tools, not for your own personal gain, but for the survival of the state itself. And this realism, well, it translates into a very direct and, yeah, often ruthless guide for winning and holding on to power. And to really hammer his points home, Machiavelli focuses on one man he saw as an absolute master of the craft. Let me introduce you to Cesare Borgia. He was the son of a pope, and he basically carved out a state for himself in central Italy with this breathtaking speed and ruthlessness. Machiavelli actually saw him in action and was just mesmerized. For him, Borgia was the perfect model for any new prince trying to build a state from the ground up. Okay, so Borgia's method was a masterclass in Machiavellian logic. To deal with his untrustworthy allies, he invites them to a peace negotiation and then has them all killed. Classic fraud and force. Then, to tame a violent province, he appoints this super cruel subordinate to do all the dirty work. But here's the masterstroke. Once order was restored, Borgia had that same man publicly and brutally executed. He got all the credit for the new stability, while all the hatred for the cruelty went to the dead governor. The people were left, as Machiavelli famously put it, satisfied and dismayed. What's so crucial here is that Machiavelli didn't admire Borgia for being evil. He admired him for being effective. Every single act of violence had a clear political purpose aimed at building a stable state. Borgia's ultimate failure, Machiavelli argued, wasn't because of bad planning, but because of what he called an extreme malignity of fortune. Basically, he got deathly ill at the exact same moment his powerful father, the Pope, suddenly died. Just terrible luck. All right, so beyond these stories, Machiavelli also offers some universal tools for any ruler. And he really focuses on two essentials: a prince's mastery of war and his control over his own people. First up, arms. For Machiavelli, a prince's number one job is war. That's it. He absolutely despised mercenaries, hired guns, calling them unreliable and dangerous. He truly believed they had ruined Italy because their only loyalty was to money, not to the state they were fighting for. The only way to be secure, he argued, is to have an army of your own citizens, people loyal to you and to their homeland. So, okay, you have an army at your back. That brings us right back to the big question: how should a prince manage his people? Through love or through fear? His answer is crystal clear. Of course, it would be best to be both, but that's almost impossible. So, a wise prince chooses fear. His reasoning is this cold, hard calculation of human nature. Love, he says, is a bond that people, being self interested, will break whenever it's convenient for them. But fear is based on a dread of punishment, and that is something a prince can always control. The crucial part, though, is to be feared but never hated. That's the line you can't cross. So, after all of this, what do we make of this little book? For 5 centuries, it's been read, it's been condemned, and it's been used by leaders all over the world, creating this really complicated and, let's be honest, dark reputation for its author. I mean, his name itself became an adjective. To be Machiavellian means to be a manipulative schemer who believes the ends justify the means. It's a word that pretty much implies pure, cynical evil. But is that a fair assessment of what he was actually trying to say? Well, people have been arguing about that forever. Some see him as a literal teacher of evil who wrote a handbook for tyrants. Others see him as a desperate Italian patriot who wrote this shocking guide because he thought it was the only way to save Italy from foreign invaders. And today, many see him as the first real political scientist, a guy who wasn't judging politics by what it should be, but was just describing, with brutal honesty, what it is. So, when you look at the world today, at politics, at power, are Machiavelli's cold-blooded rules still the unspoken truth of how things work, or are they just a dark relic of a brutal past we've moved beyond? 500 years later, his provocative questions are, somehow, as relevant as ever.